Alpha and 24-3 Alpha. Can I get you to sys 2401 Alpha, Roger?
Hello, my name's Holly Barkwell, and I'm the President and CEO of BH Group, Inc., and I'm also the NENA Canadian Region Director. We're here to discuss a second series of interviews. The last one focused more on the technology side of NextGen 911. This is a second in an ongoing series, and now we are discussing the transition to NextGen 911 services, but we're focusing on the human resource aspects now and the effects that we think that this transition might or might not have on people. Today we have with us Ricardo Martinez, creator and host of the online program Within the Trenches. You can find the program on social media by searching #IAM911, and he is also the Director of Communications for INdigital Telecommunications. Thank you very much, Ricardo, for taking time to speak to us today.
No, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Given that the next-gen environment is a little bit different from in the US than in Canada, I have some questions that I ask our next-gen participants in Canada on different technology-related items, but I think the human resources aspects kind of transcend the borders, and they affect all telecommunicators, call takers and dispatchers with equal impact. And I want to discuss some of the evolution for call takers and dispatchers in the process. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, in your podcasts and in your experience, you've obviously seen a lot of how call taking and dispatching works today. How do you see the role? I'm going to ask you two different questions. First of all, how do you see the role of call taking evolving for NextGen 911?
Well, I was a dispatcher as well for about 13 and a half years. And when I started out, it was about 2001. So just in that time, a lot has changed. And I think, we're always going to call 911 dispatchers either 911 dispatchers or call takers or whichever. But I think it's going to, at least the name as well, is going to evolve into more of an emergency communications officer or specialist. Because even with just the introduction of text to 911, there's a lot that's changing there. And myself, as someone working as an industry partner with INdigital, we train, or I train along with a couple other people, dispatchers, on how to use that technology. Now, one class specifically that I remember is that there were some people who, no one likes change, right? Nobody likes change. And this is one of those things where they were saying, I don't want this. We don't want to do this, but our bosses are wanting us to do this, and this is something that we're going to have to move to eventually. And I would tell them, yeah, you're going to have to, because technology is coming really fast. And this is just one more way, when voice isn't enough, that you'll be able to reach out to someone. So but one of the things that was amazing is that, so this was the younger crowd that were not really wanting to change. The more seasoned dispatchers that were there were kind of saying the same thing, but as soon as they started using it, they were picking it up like that, and they were all about it. So it's one thing that with technology changing, that people don't like change, but once they see that change and get used to it, it just becomes one more thing in the entire process of being a 911 dispatcher or call taker. But one thing that we have to think about as well is that as this is evolving, in specifically talking just text 911 right now, you're taking away some of that human element, where now you don't have that voice. You always hear 911 dispatch is the calming voice in the chaos. That voice is gone, and now you have to depend on other elements where, when you're on a phone call, you're listening for things that are going on in the background, noises, people saying different keywords that you pick on to piece together the puzzle that can be a 911 call. But now when you're sending a text back and forth to each other, all of that creativeness has to go into pulling out different questions and such. So there's a lot of different things that'll go into the evolution
Mhm.
of a call taker or a dispatcher, especially when you bring in, video and images and live streams.
Do you see realistically the introduction of video and live streaming into the dispatch environment? I mean, my view has always been that dispatcher's job is to get the right resources out the door as soon as possible, with the right equipment and the right people. I really can't myself see dispatchers sitting there trying to digest live video while they're trying to figure out how they need to get out the door.
Right. Yeah. So it's it's possible. There is a possibility that something like that could happen. I mean, you think about, and this kind of goes in with the evolution of emergency dispatching as well as a whole. That there's there's many things that can happen. So just focusing on the live streaming and watching things that are going on. Um, you've got we've got AVLs, automatic vehicle
Mhm.
locations or locators. Um, you can see officers going all over the place, but you've also got these the cams, they're body cams.
Mhm.
What if there is that possibility that they'll end up putting in a live feed where now is seeing even more of what's going on.
Mhm.
I had there was an organization who had sent out a request to me to write an article on just looking at the future of 911 dispatching, call taking, and what it would look like in the year 2050. And one of the things that I put in my prediction, again, just my thought of how it might happen, is that live streams would end up coming into place. Now, just with images and videos where people
Mhm.
don't want that, they don't want that change. There's one thing that, in my opinion, I think will end up helping. Where in the beginning, people are going to reject it, of course, because they don't want to see it. It's bad enough hearing it that in your mind,
Mhm.
your imagination almost is worse than what's going on out there. But we also have to think about the fact that when you're dispatching and when dispatchers have a lot of issues with calls, it's because they don't get any closure. It's because they don't know what happened. And in this way, in a sense, although a harsh way to put it, if they're seeing what's going on, or if they know exactly what is going on, and if we're able to supply our 911 dispatchers and call takers with everything that they need to be able to deal with and handle, and hopefully have a chance to go and decompress, that maybe knowing will be the key to what some of the issues have been with PTSD and
Mhm.
other mental health and wellness.
Hmm. It's a very interesting viewpoint. I hadn't considered that. But that's true. Closure would be a big deal for sure. And for anybody who's thinking along that lines, you can go out and see any of Ricardo's podcasts, and have a look at what the communicators are saying. And some of the stories are pretty powerful. um, so you've kind of answered my next question as well, which was about dispatching. We've covered that all together. So when you examine the emergency call center environment, what impact do you foresee in the evolution of the role for human resources management, for these members?
In what specific aspect? Like, so,
So in terms of what kind of people do we need to be filling these roles? We have learned in the past that human nature is we don't like change. That's a fact. We have to
right.
deal with it, but we don't like it. Um, the younger generation that is coming up now that's going to be filling these roles are going to be taking on some different aspects. So we are now managing 4 different generations in the communication center. How do we manage that more effectively going forward?
Yeah, that is definitely a tough one.
The $1 million
'Cause
question.
right, yeah, yeah, because right now, all over the world, I mean, especially in the United States, I'm sure you all deal with the same thing in Canada, the issue of being short-staffed. At least,
Mm.
from what I've read, it's short-staffed everywhere. There are no dispatch centers
Fatigue. No.
Yeah, they can't keep their people. So how do you combat that? What is it that needs to be done? And also in this article that I wrote, I kind of talked about it a little bit where I said, when people finally put dispatch first, when they finally brought in the resources for continued education, training, the mental health and wellness to be able to take care of them and to be able to
Hmm.
see this as an actual career, not a stepping stone, to show people that this can be sustainable career. You can do this, and especially the amount of money that people end up getting paid. I say that because when I first started out dispatching, and again, this is in 2001. This was a smaller police department out in Florida. My start out pay was 750 an hour, and after 3 years, I believe it was 925 an hour. Now,
Wow.
in saying that, I was a dispatcher who worked alone for 8 hours. Sometimes it'd be overtime and such. I didn't get a lot of time off. The area that I was in was the cost of living wasn't that high actually, but either way, it's not a real high wage. But I continued with it because for myself, and I've heard it from a lot of people in the amount of episodes that I've done, that this is a calling. This is something that
Hmm.
really sticks with you. It gets in your blood, and you want to continue doing it. And then the pay doesn't matter, but there are some that they need that to continue
Hmm.
living. So once we actually put all of that, and we're able to finally get all of that put together, I think that's one of the biggest things that will be needed to get people to stay and continue working as a dispatcher, a call taker. um, there are many little things as well. Do sit-alongs. Get people to come in
Hmm.
before the actual interview to sit there and see what is going on. Now, in my own um, history of this, we've had people come in and there's nothing going on, so they don't get to see. They don't get to see what it is that's going on. But if you get them there during a time where they see everything hitting the fan, and they come back or they continue to stay, that's somebody that you want. You want someone who's
Hmm.
going to be there, who's going to be able to hear the most horrific things. And yeah, in the back of our minds, we're freaking out. But during the call, we are focused and doing what we have to do. It's after the call that we can go and decompress if we can. Otherwise, you continue moving on to the next call and go from there. But that's one of the things. That's one of the biggest things is doing those sit-alongs, and find someone with common sense, typing skills, the ability to multitask. The biggest thing is common sense. I've told people that when they've asked, what does it take? I'm like, well, it takes common sense and being human.
Hmm.
If you can do that and really be a multitasker, you can do this job. Because when people are calling in, they're not calling in on the best day of their lives, and we're there to help them. If we give them any flack or anything for something that they're calling us on, and that's the first time they've called, they're not going to call back again. And if they do,
Right.
they're not going to give us the information that we need.
Very true points. I think one of the things you touched on in terms of the skills that we're looking for going forward, you hear a lot of people talking about, the ability to show empathy, but not, without sympathizing, because sympathizing assumes you're taking ownership of that situation, whereas empathy is you're being caring, but you can leave it aside,
Mhm.
so to speak, I guess. And I think in terms of how we train our dispatchers up and coming is, I think that's a critical piece of it right there, is how to deal with these situations and listen attentively, but how to distance yourself a little bit, because if you're personally involved, you can't do your job.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So in addition to those skills that we just talked about, and you mentioned a few of them already, which is common sense, you need an interest in what you're doing. What other skills would you think new hires are going to need to bring that we haven't necessarily needed to see in the past?
Well, there's a lot of with that new technology that we're talking about, being able to really um, get a hold of that technology and not just use it for its standard use, but to go beyond that, to get creative with it. What I mean by that is, let's look at Text 901, for instance. There have been people that I've spoken to that have used, different programs and such that have used it for so many different things. So, for instance, outbound texting, which gives dispatch the ability to initiate a text from 911 by using the cell phone's 10-digit number. They have been able to do creative things where, one example was a helicopter water rescue. The radio system was not working great. They didn't have communication with the pilot or co-pilot, at least not that well. Well, they were able to get the cell phone number for the co-pilot, and they were texting back and forth with them, and they ended up rescuing these teenagers that were part of this complex water rescue. So we need people who can think outside of the box. It's not just those who can follow the rules and memorize
Mm,
things. Um, it's those thinking outside of the box, looking at it with fresh eyes and saying, hey, you know what? What if we did it this way? Or it might be faster to
mhm,
do it this way. And not just that, but to to have those who have been there for a while listen to the new people that are coming in and you know working more as a team than before, because we've all had people who come in and there have been suggestions given or whichever, and it's like, well, you're once you've been here long enough, you'll learn a different way or something. But
mm,
when I was first starting out, I had found a different way to do things, and I had trainers who were saying, you should do it my way, or no, you should do it my way, and then I had my own way. So there's all of that coupled in. That's one of the biggest things, is having people that come in that are creative with the technology that we have, to think outside of the box, to be able to get help out there as fast as we can.
So if I hear you correctly, I'm hearing open-mindedness.
You got it.
A
That
big
is exactly it.
step. And that goes for young and for older, as I put myself in that category. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the skills and how the roles are going to change. Um, do you foresee any recruiting challenges trying to fill these roles as they evolve?
I think there's going to be, there will be. I mean, there are challenges right now, but what you see also all over the news is the fact that there's so much, just being short staffed, people being held over for overtime and more, and not getting to go home and do certain things or having time off,
Mm-hmm.
and that does scare people. However, I guess it can kind of go both ways. It scares people not to come in, but there are some of the younger crowd that will see that and think, I want a job where I can take that overtime and actually make a little more money off of that. There are some people who are like that, so
Mm-hmm.
it does go both ways. But I think with also with the technology that's coming in, again, even with that, I think it'll go both ways, where people will see it and they'll be afraid, or people will know about some of this that have been there for a while. Seasoned dispatchers,
Mm-hmm.
veteran dispatchers, however you want to put it, and they'll want to move from that spot because they don't want that change that's going to come with it. So but then you'll have those that see that technology and they will love it. I've got coworkers that the way they say, I'm a nerd. I love that kind of technology and I want to keep moving with it. And I'm the same way. So, that's one of the I think that's one of the bigger things that'll be, recruiting challenge, the new things, the unknown really, that's coming. But not just that, um there's pay, there's benefits,
Mm-hmm.
there are things to that matter. What kinds of things am I going to end up seeing? I personally think that it's okay to let people know right off the bat, you're getting into something that's going to change your life. You know,
Hmm.
it's going to change your life for it could change your life for the good. It could change your life.
Yeah.
It could affect you in a negative way, possibly. But what we need is for those who are running those dispatch centers to tell them that, but also say, we're going to provide you tools. We're going to provide you the tools that you need to be able to combat those things that could be harmful to you, because this is an important job and you are the most vital piece of public safety. You're 911. The calls start with you.
Hmm.
So where there are challenges, there are ways for us to be able to combat that and keep people there.
So better work-life balance is
Right.
going to
Yeah.
be a key go forward. Um, just a question off the cuff as we're talking, in all of the interviews that you've done and the dispatchers and call takers that you've spoken to, not that I'm not asking you to name names, but are there centers doing it right out there? Or do we still have a way to go?
There are some centers that are out there doing it right. I see it just all over the place. There are people out there that are, you know, one of the big things is we say that, you know, we're there, we're doing our job, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
We don't want a attaboy or attagirl or thank you or whatever. But every now and then it does help. And there are
Mhm.
some centers out there that I've seen on social media or on their websites or whichever. They're they're praising their people and they're putting them out there. You know, they're sharing these stories. For a long time, you didn't see stuff like that. It was rare to see something like that. The only thing you would see would be the negative stuff in the news, which is always horrible. But things have changed in the last 3 or 4 years where dispatch centers are sharing their stories. They're sharing many things about their dispatchers, and they're doing it right. I mean, there's one
Mhm.
in Kentucky that I know of right now. They've put in such a great training program. They have in their basement this room that doubles as their training room as well as a place for them to decompress, where they have these amazing chairs that are they you know they're massage chairs. Now not every place can afford that or anything, but they're really putting it out there that they're taking care of their 911 dispatchers, because in order for the public and those in the field to have the best support possible, the ones taking those calls need to be taken care of. So there are some out there that are doing it. There are some that I've spoken to that, you know, they don't have, one, they don't have a budget for training. Two, they don't have you know, any opportunity to go to conferences. They don't have a SISM team or anything, which is a critical
Mhm.
incident stress management. There's a lot of things that they don't have. So
Mhm.
I think there's more that are not um, doing everything that they could, but also, you know, we don't know the backstory. I don't know if that's,
Mhm.
you know, county politics or whatever it is that, you know, they don't have the funding for it. But there are definitely dispatch centers out there that are doing great things.
Well, that's very encouraging to hear, because you're right. We always tend to hear, the only time you hear about things is when they go horribly wrong. And I mean, as members of NENA and APCO and various other organizations, you hear the pain points all the time and what can we be doing better. We very rarely hear about the things that are going well.
Mm.
So, the final question I have for you, um, as agencies transition to next gen technologies and services, et cetera, what recommendations would you have in terms of human resources practices or skills or anything regarding operations and human resources management? What recommendations would you have?
Well, I mean, if you haven't started looking at anything to do with next generation 911, I would start now because you're a little behind. And
Or a lot?
I say that with love because I mean there's so many things that are going on right now. I mean, you've got to look at the type of people that you want to be working in your dispatch center. And you once you get them in there, how are you going to keep them? And then looking at next generation 911, you've got, once again, like we were talking, text to 911. You've got one of the things I wanted to mention before, like heat maps, predictive dispatching. There's going to be a time where, and it's already out right now. There's already centers out there that are using different heat maps for predictive dispatching. But that's something that's going to, really be a big thing, in my opinion, with emergency communication centers in the future, even even really soon. That type of thing is going to be coming in, where you're going to have people that are going to be watching different parts of the map and seeing where different medicals were happening, different crimes are going on, and then you can be able to tell someone, go sit at this cross street and this one, and there will be calls that end up coming in that area. But
Right.
there's so many resources out there that you can go to, all the different organizations, NENA, the APCO, the IAD, which
Mhm.
is the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch. All of them have resources that you can look at to start planning, to start implementing, to really getting things put together for your people that are going to be coming in, because the change is happening now. And if you haven't started
Mhm.
looking into it, you need to start looking, planning, and bringing people in that are going to forward your dispatch centers into the future of 911.
Well, thank you very much, Ricardo. I really appreciate your insight in addition to our program
Thank
as
you.
we
This was
move
fun.
forward. And yeah, well, there are a lot of similarities between Canada and the U.S. There are more similarities than dissimilarities, and hopefully we can all arrive at the same point, sort of in a similar time frame.
Yeah, exactly.
So have a fantastic rest of your afternoon. And that's it. We're done.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you again for having me on. This was a lot of fun, and I look forward to the result.